Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Five Questions with the Paulist Fathers. And today we're going to head down to our nation's capital and at Landings International. We're going to talk to Pat Watson. Hey, Pat, how are you?
Hi, Mike. How are you? I'm great.
You're good, good. I'm glad you're doing well. Let's just jump right into it. And question one, if
Okay.
a friend or a family member told you that they're thinking about leaving the Catholic Church, what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I would take a very deep breath because I don't like to react immediately to things. And then I think I would say to them, um, you're a very intelligent person. Oh, why are you thinking this way?
Hmm.
And I would start to listen to their reasons. And I find that when I do that with anything, that people start trying to make sense of what they're saying. And sometimes they realize that they really don't have a problem that they thought they did. I guess I'm hung up with listening because I learned that from Landings. Landings is a Paulist reconciliation ministry, and the ministry helps faith communities welcome in a very welcoming, non judgmental way inactive Catholics, people who, for some reason or other, have left an active participation in the church or who are questioning their role in the church. It's completely lay led so that pastors and parish priests don't have another thing to add to their list. Typically, we have 10 to maximum of 12 people. Half of the people are welcomers. They are people who are active in the church and attend regularly. And the other half are people who we hope will be coming back into the church. We have about a 99 and 44, 100% success rate.
You do.
And so we're very happy about that. The program is 6 sessions. It's 2 hours for each session, and every person in that group has a role. One of the persons is a timekeeper, and it is very structured because we regard people's time as very important. Um, and the program itself is storytelling, first of all, prayer, and then an opportunity for people to tell their story in a confidential setting. And catechesis also, because many of them have left the church before the church has changed.
Mm.
The doctrine hasn't changed, but the attitudes of the church, some of the ideas that are put forth. And so we have a regular time for catechesis. As I said, the groups are very small. We're located all over the world. So we're called Landings International. And our director, Father Thomas Kane, and one of our staff members, Robert McCleary, just returned from Asia,
Oh,
where we have programs in Singapore and in Malaysia and also Thailand.
wow.
Now, in Singapore, they met with leaders and the lay leaders in all of those three countries. But in Malaysia, they had an hour and a half meeting with the Bishop of Kuala Lumpur. He is sold on the idea. They
Wow.
already have a program there. In the United States, we find that most of our programs um, are held 2 or 3 times a year. Lent is a good time, Advent a good time, and we have many parishes that hold programs during the summer. And but in Asia, they have huge groups of people. They
Wow.
still keep the groups small, 10 to 12 people, but they might have 4 or 5 groups of them at one time going. It's amazing how it has caught on. We're also in the UK, in Scotland, and in Wales. and of course in the United States. Um, I think the situation in Singapore is a perfect example of how one person can make a difference. There was a uh, very successful Singaporean businessman who was vacationing in the United States at Christmas time. This was about 12 years ago. And he decided to go to dinner in Chinatown and walked by St. Mary's. Well, St. Mary's was having midnight mass coming up. They had all kinds of beautiful hymns coming out the door, lots of lights. He decided to go in. And there he saw a poster advertising landings. And so he took down the information. And when he went back home, he called us up and said, "How do I start a program here?"
Wow.
So he started one program at the cathedral in Singapore. That has spread to 3 more churches. One of the priests from Singapore was moved to Malaysia. So there is Malaysia. And now that gentleman who began the whole process has moved with his company to Thailand. So now we have Asia pretty much sewed up. So talk about the story of the mustard seed. It's a perfect example of how one person can make such a difference.
Yeah. Pat, with all these places, question 2 is what's the reason that you hear most often about why people return to the church?
Well, we hear different stories. Some people have had, I guess, fatigue, where they missed mass for a couple of Sundays for good reason, a snowstorm. They were embedded in home. They and they perhaps just got in a habit of not going to church. And so once, as you know, good habits can be formed, but bad habits can be formed, and they're hard to break.
Yes.
So that's one reason. Another reason is that people very often get caught up in worldly issues. And so fame and fortune and social status is so important. And then they find that it doesn't work. There's something missing. And so they come back. We've had people that were expats from the United States working for companies and for the government overseas. There wasn't a church nearby or within miles. So they got out of the habit. And again, because they got out of the habit, when they returned home, they just didn't think about it. And so finally it dawns on them, maybe I ought to go back to church. But all of them, no matter who, everybody admits they came back because they were invited. Now, think about it yourself. If you're invited to go to a lecture, if I'm invited to go to a Christmas party, whatever, I think twice, you think twice about the invitation. Do I have the time? Do I blah, blah, blah? But I do think about it. And that's what makes them really return. We have some wonderful lay leaders who are very innovative. They put up signs, they put up banners, huge banners on bell towers. They have, amazing advertisements in newspapers, Catholic newspapers and non-Catholic newspapers. I had one lady who told me several times that she worked on an Air Force base and she used to put up the ads or the announcements of the program coming up on their bulletin board. And I said to her, "Well, have you asked Uncle Sam? Because I don't want you to get in trouble." But basically, as I said, it's a non-threatening, sincere invitation. And we always tell them, if you come and you don't like it, you can leave. But no one ever does. So,
Exactly.
and I've been in a lot of programs, especially in our parish. That's first how I got involved in landings.
Sure. Pat, question three, you've spent a majority of your ministry life giving comfort to people. What's a comfort food for you?
Oh, that's an easy one.
Mm.
Ice cream.
Oh, there you go.
Ice cream in any form, any flavor. Give me ice cream. You can hear my laryngitis. I need ice cream right now.
I was going to
And
say it's 14 degrees out, Pat.
I know it's okay. um, I thought I've been very fortunate to do a lot of traveling in the world. And in other countries, I ask for food and they don't understand me, but I say ice cream. Everybody knows ice cream. So yeah, that's my go-to.
Yeah. Question four, what's a current trend in faith today that is surprised you the most? Like, what's something that's going on that you never thought you'd see happen?
Oh, excuse me. I think that the church's willingness to dialogue with other religions is so impressive to me. I salute the Paulists for their work in ecumenical and interfaith relations. It's so important. And they're building bridges. I guess I feel so strongly about that because when I was a young girl in elementary school, we were told that only Catholics could go to heaven.
Hmm.
Now, I adored my grandparents. They were wonderful people, but they weren't Catholic. So I was worried they wouldn't go to heaven. When I was about 8 years old, our family was invited by the family next door to a wedding. And of course, if you're an 8-year-old girl and you're going to get a new dress and a new hat and new shoes, you're very excited. And when my mother dropped the information to the pastor, he said, "You'll be excommunicated because that's a Lutheran church and you can't go inside even." And in fact, he told my mother that if we walked by, we should look the other way.
Yeah.
Well, when I was only 8, but I was horrified. I couldn't believe that that would be happening. But that's what we were told, and that's what we believed. There was no ecumenism. Even when I graduated from college, which granted was some time ago, but it wasn't that long ago, I had a couple of friends who married non-Catholics. Well, I couldn't go to the wedding because it was a very small wedding in the rectory.
Wow.
For the Catholic girl and that boy. The attitude was so negative. So things are changing and they're changing in some ways rather quickly. In our parish about 10 years ago, we had a pastor who was very ecumenical, and he started, and thank God it has continued, a Friday in Lent, the Good Friday pilgrimage. Now, I attend a church that is seated on a circle in Washington, and there are 6 roads and 3 other churches besides ours that are around this circle. So every year it starts at a different church, and someone carries this huge wooden cross, and we start saying the stations. We sing inside the church. We say prayers inside the churches, and then we go to the next church, and we go around and around and until we have visited all 4 churches on Good Friday afternoon, beginning at 3:00. It's a beautiful thing, and there's hundreds of people that come to it. And you can imagine now this circle is a major thoroughfare, and always remaining in my memory will be a scene that I've witnessed where a huge traffic trailer was stuck in traffic and in the traffic because of course the police come and shut down all the roads. And this gentleman, shall we call him, was leaning out of the truck with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And he said, "What is going on?" But he didn't say it quite in those words. And while I sympathize with him, I think he got a real lesson in ecumenical activity, because he had to sit there and wait till the cross and hundreds of people cross the street and allow the traffic to move again.
Wow.
So we've come a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, question 5. It's the one we ask everybody. So you're on a desert island, and we've already given you the scriptures. So what's one other book that you need to have with you?
Oh, if I'm on a desert island, the scriptures are great because I can wake up and read them,
Sure.
and I can read the Psalms when I go to bed at night or go sleep on the sand. But I spent 38 years sailing with my family on the Chesapeake Bay. Weekends and vacations, we took our teenage boys out so they couldn't get in much trouble that way, out on the waters. So I would say that this book, and you can see how big it is,
Yeah.
it's called Chapman's Piloting, and it has everything in there. And what I would do is I would open up and find the page to build a raft or hollow out a canoe. I would rig some kind of sail. I would get out into the current, and I would get myself off that island and come back and work for Landings again, all over again, another 11 years at least.
That's great.
It's been a
You're
pleasure.
getting off that island no matter what, right?
Exactly.
Pat, that's great. So those are 5 questions with the Paulist. And Pat, thanks so much for joining us. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, it was my pleasure indeed. Thanks again.
So this has been 5 questions with the Paulist, and we'll see you all again next time.